Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. Hey, small business people and lovers of good stories in general. Welcome to the show. My name is Pablo Fuentes, and I am your host. Today, I am very excited to introduce episode 53 and our guest, Carla Nowicki. She is the founder and principal of Pursuit Nutrition. She has a very interesting approach to the idea of nutrition. She's a performance coach, so she coaches people with in regards to nutrition with performance in mind, and she's very, very good at it. I met her through the folks here at Atomic Athlete in Austin, and this is going to be our last Austin episode for a while. We are going to next week go into the Soul of America 2 episodes. I drove all the way from Austin through Colorado up to Montana, back down through Jackson Hole and to Wyoming, and then western Colorado, Durango and Santa Fe, and back to Austin, interviewing people all over the land in the Rocky Mountains. And we have a lot of episodes all the way to August covering all of these really, really exciting, cool businesses. And we have some really interesting businesses on tap for that. But this week, we're going to focus on Carla and her business here in Austin, Pursuit Nutrition. And this episode is brought to you by Proven. Proven.com is a company I started, and it is a small business hiring tool that has evolved into now a hub for small businesses to get information about all types of different things that you need to know in order to effectively run a business. So anything from finance, insurance, what apps, what technology to use. We are writing content out there to help you make better decisions to be successful with your business. So check out blog.proven.com. We have a really cool new redesign, and we'd love to hear your feedback on that. Without further ado, I do want to get into today's episode with Carla Nowicki of Pursuit Nutrition in Austin, Texas. And we are live here in beautiful Austin, Texas, in a very unique ice rain day in the middle of the winter here. And I have the pleasure of sitting down here with Carla Nowicki, who is the principal at Pursuit Nutrition. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's you're brave to get out there on the roads today. It's Austin's not really a city doesn't have the infrastructure for snow. So today we woke up with a layer of ice on the ground. It's a little different.
Yeah, traffic was nothing, so easy to get here.
Yeah, because nobody
was on the road. Nobody braved it.
That's awesome. Well, I guess hopefully nobody gets in an accident. So.
True.
So let's talk a little bit about nutrition, and this is something that I think is really I'm excited about this podcast. It's something that I've studied in the past and try to learn more about. So we'll talk about both nutrition and what you do, and also the business aspect of being a nutritionist. But let's talk a little bit about what inspired you to start your company. Why do this?
Yeah. So what inspired me, I guess I have to start with why I wanted to be a dietitian. So I grew up an athlete. I was a gymnast, cross country runner, pole vaulter, track athlete, triathlete, you name it, I was active. And growing up, all the sports that I did always had the same method of the smaller you are, the better you're going to be at your sport. So the lighter you are when you're running, or the smaller you are in gymnastics, the focus is always being smaller. And so I became absolutely obsessed with the idea of I want to be smaller. And that affects almost every female you see in any sport of I want to be better and I'm going to lose weight to become that better. So you almost get this competition of other females of eating less. And you find that it's not always eating less that makes you powerful for your sport. And that was the lesson I learned. I ended up basically super underfed, found that I didn't know what I was doing, and the only person that told me otherwise was a dietitian that came in and talked to our gymnastics team when our coaches said, oh, these girls must be eating junk food, that's why they're not performing well. And when she found out that, no, we were not eating lunch, we were not eating before we came, we were eating breakfast because we had to with our family, and then sometimes we would eat dinner when we got home. And that was just not conducive to having the energy to do our sport. So the next day, we immediately had mandatory snack time and had to make sure we were eating lunch and eating before practice. And that impacted me a lot into realizing I need to fuel myself for my sport and for my life and not just undereat. And that was a huge part of why I wanted to share that with others. And creating my own business, I always knew exactly what I wanted to become, so I went to school for that instantly and knew I wanted to be a sports dietitian. I immediately got out into the workforce, and I basically found that because I'm so young, knowing what I want to do, there's not a lot of job opportunities out there. Most dietitians are clinical dietitians, which means that they're in a hospital setting trying to help people stay alive, versus I want to help people find what their next level is of how much better they can perform.
Okay, so yeah, that's that. I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but about the difference between different dietitians. Now, or different types of dietitians. You came from, you originally in North Carolina, if I remember correctly? Yep. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about that. So you transitioned. How did you transition from grad school to having your own business and being out there in North Carolina?
So grad school I ended up with my dream job right out of grad school. So I was working for a large performance company, and that ended up being not what I thought, because I was hired because I was multi-useful as a tool. I could be a strength coach and a dietitian, so many uses and so many places that I never got to focus at one thing. So I never got to be a specialty as a performance dietitian. So I quickly did not fit into that facility because I was being used in ways that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so after finding that was not what I wanted to do, I also at the time was with my boyfriend, and knowing his career choices are going to move us around for the next couple years, probably until he found something that was going to be suitable for him, I was going to be looking for something I could do remotely to help people. So I started off with a complete remote business and have grown into in-person clientele as well.
Okay. And now, how long has it been since you started?
It's been about a year and a half since I started, and about 8 months I've had in person.
Okay, interesting. So and it's ramped up over time. So did you start doing your remote business while you were doing something else?
Yes.
Okay, so that allowed you to kind of ramp up your business and not lose your source of income.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that, because that's a balance that a lot of people, not just nutritionists, anybody who's starting a business tries to strike. So how did you manage that?
Knowing I have that background of always being a strength coach and a personal trainer and a CrossFit coach, I did all of those things to find income while I was building my own business.
Okay.
So I have been jumping around to different gyms, and that's also been really beneficial of gaining my clientele, of making just good connections with other gyms in the field of just different areas.
Okay. And that makes, obviously, I mean, those two things have some synergy, right? Because the people who are going to be your strength and conditioning clients are likely to also become nutritionists.
Exactly.
Clients. Okay, cool. Yeah, because that's something we always talk about is like, how do you know when to make the jump to fully commit to your business? So how did you know that?
I knew because moving to Austin, I quit my job in North Carolina right before we moved, and knowing that moving to Austin, thankfully financially, my boyfriend got a larger pay increase, and that I just needed to bite the bullet and live really frugally until I had the courage to really make up my own income.
Okay.
So it was a little bit of fire to want to get better when you're not making any money.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Nothing focuses you like a lack of cash. Right?
Yeah.
Sounds good. So let's talk a little bit about the difference in dietitian. So you talked, to pick up on what you just said before, the difference between being a clinical dietitian and a performance dietitian. So what does that mean? And are there other further types of dietitians?
For sure. There's food service dietitians that are focused on basically food preparation and making sure hospitality-wise that are working in maybe hotels or larger corporate settings of just making food with ordering enough food for cafeterias and such. There are clinical dietitians which are focused on keeping people alive. There is a large number of people that you don't think about that are on tube feedings their entire life. And to know how much to eat, I mean, it's hard enough to know how much food you're eating. Now put that in a completely different form. That's a very tricky thing. So dietitians work in that form, teaching people when they're first starting out to a new diabetic or someone who just had a heart attack.
Okay.
Those are all more clinical dietitians.
Okay, and you don't work with those kinds of folks. So
Not usually,
So
no.
there are people that you say, thank you, but this is not a good fit.
Exactly.
How do you handle those conversations? What happens?
The hardest ones I've ever had of you're just not a good fit for me are the ones where I need to refer them over to more of a psychiatric facility.
Oh.
So
I did not. Okay.
you never would have thought of that one.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I did not expect a nutritionist to have to refer people to a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So how does that happen?
For one, people think eating disorders. So eating disorders,
anorexia.
exactly. So it's not really usually an eating issue. It's
Yeah.
a combination of the food choices because of a psychological connection they have with that food.
Yeah. So what are your markers? What do you look for to know that they should do that?
Somebody who has a very, very strong of, I'm never going to eat this. And it's a certain food group. And everyone has small amounts of that. But if somebody is going to say, I don't eat any carbohydrates, including carrots, up to that level. Or if somebody is obsessed with counting calories, that mental obsessedness is something that is a little bit tricky. There's been one toying on and off of, okay, I need to work with you with a psychologist as well if this becomes an obsession for you with running. If it becomes that you need to run 18 miles or you don't get food.
Right.
Those type of triggers.
Now you have a personal story with
do.
this. Because you share this on your website, and you want to share that because it's an interesting and
Yeah.
you kind of that was a marking moment for you, right?
That was a very marking moment for me, and kind of going back into the idea of me growing up in sports, the marking moment of I need help and something's not right, and why I was so thrilled to have that dietitian teach me that I didn't need to earn my food is being the combination of a runner. I knew something was actually wrong when I went for a 13-mile run for no reason other than I was basically guilted and forced to eat a cupcake at my best friend's birthday party.
Okay. So you had a cupcake.
Yep.
So your brain said must go run a half marathon because
Exactly.
of cupcake.
Because of cupcake.
Right. And the cupcake has, I don't know, what are we going to say?
Nowhere near
300 calories
Yeah.
maybe? And you burn a lot more than 300 calories
Oh
in a
yeah,
half marathon.
you've probably run that in the first couple miles, let
Yeah.
alone 13.
Yeah.
So that mental of I didn't earn this, I need to earn my food, and that's what I really try to get away from. This idea of you earn your food by how much exercise you get.
Okay. So what do you replace that with?
So replacing it with you being alive, just have food needs. So there's nothing wrong with having a cupcake. There's nothing wrong with utilizing food in general. Mm-hmm. So when I see someone exactly have that obsession towards food is
Yeah.
when I see it as a trigger point.
Right. And you identify with the point that you were at.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So do you think that you had some form of an eating disorder that then ended up transforming into this?
No doubt in my mind.
Okay.
I mean, personally, I went through a bout of bulimia. I went through a bout of the longest I went in gymnastics without eating because I had a competition. That's how unhealthy this is. Mm-hmm. You think these girls are so healthy because they look so lean and they look great, but I had a competition with my best friend, and I remember it was, both of us were gymnasts. We went 3 days without any food. And it was literally of who could go longer because that meant that the other person was actually being healthier towards their sport.
Actually, fighting, we were talking about jiu-jitsu before we started the podcast. Less jiu-jitsu, certainly mixed martial arts has a lot of this too,
Yes.
with weight cutting and everything like that. Interesting.
And current sport, I'm a weight class sport athlete now, so
Right,
mentally
because
dealing with
you're a
that.
competitive lifter, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're freakishly strong. I've seen you in the gym. It's terrifying.
Thank you.
I mean, you probably weigh like half of what I do, and you're incredibly, incredibly strong. So that's awesome. Interesting. So let's talk a little bit more about how you. I mean, this whole idea of how. I mean, society in general is kind of learning a lot about what it means to eat and to do that, right? And so, do you see society in general changing in a direction where more people are becoming educated? Part of the problem is that there's so much information out there, and there's a new diet, a new sort of way of eating, like every 6 months. How do you manage all that, and how do you, where do you kind of draw the line between being interested in food and interested in becoming educated and becoming so obsessed with it that it takes over?
Right. So yes,
That's
there's
that's a lot of
no,
questions.
no, no,
Sorry.
yeah. Let's start off with the amount of information that's out there, people wanting to learn. Yes, there's so many more people I see wanting. I almost see a shift of we're in like one of the few years of we're expected to actually live shorter than our parents. So I see this shift of people actually wanting to change that, eat healthier, wanting to work out. It's almost becoming two different directions, people that want to do absolutely nothing and people that want to work out a ton.
Yeah.
So I do see a lot of people that want to really work out and really get themselves healthy a lot more. And there's so much education that's out there. It's almost like the market has been flooded and Instagram is flooded with all these different ideas. And there's almost too much out there. And so too much bad information that really clouds the really good information that's out there. And the funny thing is like nobody wants to listen to the good information because it's kind of boring. Nobody wants to hear just eat your fruits and vegetables, mainly your vegetables, a lot more. They don't want to hear that you don't need to take out all of your carbohydrates to get there. So.
Okay. So how do you, in a world of paleo, blocks, keto, this and that, how do you kind of tell all that apart? And also, is it possible that there are different things that work for different people too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't even think I have two people in my entire client base that are on the exact same diet. So it's whether their focus is completely different. So anything from their focus on big picture items. If, hey, your goals are you're going to try to get 120 fluid ounces of water every day, and that you're going to try to get a snack in the morning in between your lunch and your breakfast and lunch that has vegetables and that has maybe some almonds in there just every day. Mm-hmm. Big picture items. And if we can do that, that's going to make it towards your goals. Or to someone who I really am having them look at how many serving sizes per meal they're going at. So it's very, very different what their focus is or their number of calories, number of what they're going for.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so there's so much out there. Are there things that are common mistakes that you see people make that are maybe a product of misinformation or maybe common conceptions out there that you encounter a lot that you're like, oh no?
The most common one I hear is, wait, but carbohydrates and grains are bad for you.
Okay.
Very common misconception.
So I eat very few carbs myself. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How do you what are the sort of I guess the counterpoint to that?
Right. So they're so useful as the right tool, and that protein is a tool, carbohydrates are a tool, fat is a tool, vegetables are a tool. And if you're trying to use the wrong tool for the job, you're not going to have a good time. You may get a nail into the wall with a screwdriver, but is it going to be easier? Are you going to damage your wall in trying to get that nail in? So it's just using the right tool for the right job.
Okay. So where are carbohydrates useful for people? Where should people be eating more of those?
Carbohydrates are really useful for sustaining your hormone balance. So making sure your blood sugar levels aren't going up and down all day. And then also for the idea of what you use for high intensity exercise. If your goal is to perform at your exercise, carbohydrates are a very useful tool.
Okay, but we're not talking about eating a plate of pasta here.
No,
okay,
not always.
So let's talk about that distinction.
Yeah. So there's a difference of, okay, carbohydrates, your first thought is bread, pasta, and all of the fluffiest things in the world that you could think of.
Sure.
But at the same time, there's other things that are carbohydrates that you don't have to think of. I mean, there's nothing wrong with occasionally having a little bit of pasta as your carb, but majority of the time it's also things like quinoa is a great carbohydrate. Rice can be a great carbohydrate. Corn is a great carbohydrate. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, squashes. There's so many
Things like
different.
hummus and garbanzo beans.
Yeah,
and
beans
so
are a great
legume.
carbohydrate.
Okay.
All of those are wonderful carbohydrates, and using those for the right tool. Fruit is a wonderful carbohydrate.
Interesting. And this is all, I mean, I don't want to go too far into this line of questioning because it's so individual to the person and their goals and what they're trying to do, right?
And how they respond. Somebody's blood sugar levels may be completely different, whether they have two people, if they have sweet potato, known as one of these ones that everyone can eat sweet potatoes. That's the best carb, supposedly. Everyone thinks that of we're not having grains. That's everyone's paleo-friendly carb. It may spike someone's blood sugar, and then the other person, it keeps it very stable.
Interesting. So how do you measure that for people?
So a lot of what I do, I'm not going to sit there and test your blood sugar levels after you eat every meal. Nobody really wants to get their finger pricked after every meal. I would probably lose a lot of clients that way.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of trial and error. So how do they feel off of certain things? I do have a lot of people that have food sensitivities doing food journals, more on the types of food, not really the amounts of food. So I can see, hey, my stomach was upset. I was so tired this day. And those are things that are affected by the foods.
Okay. So do you have everybody keep a food journal regardless or only for specific periods of time?
Specific purposes.
Okay.
So if I have someone that's obsessive about their amounts, and I can see that could easily go down the route of the eating disorder, I usually don't have them have a journal.
Okay.
Because they'll change their conception towards food of just keeping that journal.
Cool. Let's go back to the business part a little bit. So how do you find your customers? So you've kind of hinted a little bit at it here and there with the, kind of crossover between the other things you were doing, but maybe how has that changed over time? So when you first started versus now, you're still working remotely and you're working at Atomic Athlete as in a physical facility. So how is that strategy to figure out how do you acquire more customers?
A strategy right now, honestly, I've learned that my first strategy was let me go to all these different gyms and grab different clients from all these different places. And I found that if I went to at least different gyms, I would pick up one or two, and really they wouldn't stay very long. I found that the direction I want to go more is actually referral based, old school of, hey, I really liked this dietitian, you should try her too. Those are the ones that stay all the time because people hang around the people that they want to be like. So the people that want to have a dietitian and want to improve, they're going to hang around people that also want to improve.
Got it.
And that's how I get my clientele, I would say.
Do you fight a perception that a dietitian is somebody that you hire once and then they set you on a plan and then you don't hire them again? How does that work?
I explain that first email.
Okay.
This is a journey, and that I am in the belief of everyone should have a coach. Am I a strength coach? Yes. Do I have a coach? Yes. So even if right now, maybe we only need to kind of get you on page for a month or two, and then maybe 3 months down the road, check in and maybe do another month and see how everything's going. It depends person to person, but nobody is on this. I just need to plan and go. I make sure I fight that in the fact that I do monthly charges. I don't do a fee for sitting down. It's never like okay, this is my charge for sitting down one time. Your charge is by, okay, in this time span, we're going to basically check in. We're going to keep in touch. I do weekly check-ins with every single client because I have found that that's how we get results. It's not by the plan. It's the fact that I held you accountable or I changed things on how your week is going, how your day is going. It's the accountability factor and the weekly check-ins I find are my biggest benefit to the client.
Okay. And you've had customers that you've had for years now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they continuously come back. Okay. And so you probably still fight that perception, right? Of like, it's like a set it and forget it sort of thing. And you explain it over email. Do you ever have customers that say, but I'm done with this? And how are those conversations?
It's usually just saying, you're not going to see the value usually in this. And usually they don't really want to pay what I want to have you do. Realize that there's a lot of communication involved, and you can find, if you're just looking for a set diet plan to follow, there's a million online. Just follow those to a T, and that's usually what happens. So I can recommend you in a good direction, but I would rather just give you some free advice and set something up for you really quick than have a one diet plan and just run with it.
Makes sense. Interesting. Okay. Um, what prompted you to start working with the referral thing you were talking about is kind of like a high quality problem to have, meaning like if you're getting most of your customers from referrals, that means that you've built a business to do that. Has working out of a physical facility like Atomic Athlete, has that helped you get more of that, or what?
Huge.
How was that decision for you?
That is been a huge leap in what I've actually been able to do. I have two major facilities that I would say I mainly work out of. One is in Indianapolis and one is here in Austin.
Okay.
And I would say those are my two largest bases that I have, because the people who work out together talk. And the fact that I'm there physically a lot makes a big difference.
Okay. So do you fly to Indianapolis a lot?
I do.
Okay.
I do. My team is actually, my weightlifting team is based out of Indianapolis.
Oh, okay.
So I go up there quite a bit.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Very cool. What is one of the weirdest or strangest things that you've seen in this line of business? And I'm sure you've seen a lot, and without naming names or anything like that,
Yeah.
what are some of the wackiest, oddest things?
People who do not realize where they actually are or never want to admit it to themselves.
Okay.
So I have, and I'm never going to call a client out for telling me something that is not true, because a lot of people in their mind believe it. So it's usually if I have someone tell me something that's just really off, I'm going to go, okay, cool. Let's test that. Let's see where we are this week.
Okay.
So I have clients that'll come in and they're like, oh yeah, I mean, I run 5 miles at a 6-minute pace. And I'm looking at them and just saying, usually you can't always judge a book by its cover, but I'm just going to go out there and say, we're probably not running that fast for that long.
Yeah.
So I usually have them
pretty
test
fast.
it. Yeah, that's a fast clip.
Yeah.
Especially if your sport is not to run.
Yeah.
And
I'm trying to think. I'm 6'2" and 200 pounds. I don't know if I can run a single mile in 6 minutes.
yeah,
Maybe. Like if I was like really all out sprinting, but
right.
yeah.
Right. So if somebody that's maybe a strength athlete comes
Yeah.
and tells me that, it's usually a red flag of this person maybe needs to retest and maybe think that maybe they did it one time.
Yeah.
But that was 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Sure.
So to say that in their mind they've kept that, but maybe they haven't.
Okay.
Those are the kind of things I definitely have seen. I've had someone this year tell me that exact story.
Okay.
Or the misconceptions of what's in your food, that they tell me that I haven't had any carbohydrates in so long, and then they're sitting there eating like a sweet potato. And they just don't realize that vegetables are carbs, that fruit is carbs, that their sweet potato is carbs. It may be a healthy food, but that doesn't mean it's not carbohydrate.
Okay. Makes sense.
I've had that happen before.
What would you say is the number one lesson or piece of advice that you would have for small business people? So anybody who's listening who maybe is running a small business or thinking about setting out on their own and starting something, what's kind of the number one lesson you'd have for them?
You're probably going to hear this a million times. Believe in yourself, for
Okay.
one. If you don't believe in yourself...
You know what's interesting? The answers to this question are remarkably diverse. So,
Really?
Yeah, so just do you and go for it.
So believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in you, it doesn't matter if other people around you know that for a fact. They can feel it. If you don't believe in you, other people are not going to believe in you.
Okay.
And so that was one of the hardest things I had to learn, is that I need to be confident that what I have is a good product. And it's okay that there's this amazing company out there that does what you do better. Great. I'm just getting started. I don't need 13 pieces of content every week to go out. If I get one really good piece out, I'm doing a great job. And that it's okay if somebody's better than you. You're going to get bigger. You're going to get better. Be happy with the process and be happy where you are, because it's going to be really fun to realize every step along the way. The most exciting times are a lot of the time when you figure out that you can do something without the next best, like, I figured out my budget by trying to save money myself and then making a ton of Excel spreadsheets. And I didn't have the ability to have QuickBooks yet and financially be able to afford those things. And now that I can, it's exciting to look back and be like, no, I made those steps and I grew from that. So
Yeah.
I don't need to have the best, I don't need a bod pod. You know what? It's okay. I have these
Bod
plastic.
pod, is that a body fat measuring?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
A bod pod is a really most collegiate athletes measure by bod pod. So most of these settings have this piece of machinery that I'm never going to be able to afford. And that even my dinky plastic calories. Yeah, never say never.
Maybe you will be able.
One day.
Yeah.
But my dinky plastic calipers can do the exact same thing, but it's the person using them, not the machine itself. So I've grown so much in being able to say, like, I don't need these expensive tools. It's me that is the product. It's not these tools.
Okay. That's awesome. That's really inspiring. That's good. And yeah, you will have a bod pod.
Yeah, one day.
Yeah, do it. That's awesome. So actually, there's two questions that came up for me from what you just said. And I don't want to forget them, so I'll mention them. We'll go into each one of them separately. One of them is content. You mentioned that you create content to attract customers. And that's something that I'm very familiar with. That's in many ways what this is for me. So I want to talk about that. And then I also want to talk about, we talk about growing in bot pods. So what's your vision for the business? So let's first talk about content. How do you see that world? How do you approach that? What kind of content do you put out there? What do you do?
So content is what I think the market is overflooded in. So
Okay.
I like to have good content. I don't want to sit there and just have just pictures of random things all the time. I want to have a purpose of why I have a picture of beets on my Instagram. I want to have maybe a really good article that links to because of that. So what I do is content is shorter pieces usually, and I have a piece on where weight cuts are helpful and whether not helpful. The female cycle and how it pertains to basically your hormones of how much weight fluctuates. So things that I try to make that are easy to read, that you can sit down and read in 10 minutes, but you don't need to really think about it that hard.
Okay.
And
you try to have a regular publishing schedule? You said about a piece a week?
I try to have a piece a week because other than that, it does get a little overwhelming for me. I'm not a great writer. It's something I've had to get better at.
I read some of your stuff. It's pretty good.
Thank you.
What's your word count for those pieces?
That's roughly a great question. I actually don't even know.
Between 500 and 1,000 maybe?
Yeah,
roughly?
that's probably about right.
Yeah.
It's something that I can usually put on a page and a half
Yep.
really easily because I find that I don't really want to read more than 2 pages. I get bored. I get distracted.
Sure. Okay.
I love reading books, but to sit there and read an article for that long does get to me.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So and then so your content strategy consists of one long form or kind of mid form piece per week, and then Instagram. What else do you do on the content front?
I've been pushed by my business mentor, like the idea of having a coach. I always have a coach, and what I need to get better at is business. So I have a business mentor, and he's having me start to be filmed. The believing in yourself part is huge, and seeing yourself talk through a article instead of just posting it.
Yep.
That's the realm I'm starting to videotape those, and eventually so I can drip those out soon to come as well.
Okay.
Those have been a learning lesson.
Yeah. Video's tough.
Video's really tough.
Video's tough. One of the things that people don't realize about video, and this is a little bit of a side note, is single angle video bores people regardless if you're saying the most fascinating thing in the world. So to get good video, you got to get multiple angles and
that's a great tip.
And editing gets So if you get into that, that's actually one of the reasons I don't do video for this podcast, because I did 10,000 miles last year all over the country. And I'm in a new setting every day, and sometimes I have 3 up to 5 shows in one day. And and it's just me and my dog and my guitar, so I don't have a crew of people that can do that. But if you do it in a single location, you might be able to set up cameras in different places and stuff.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way actually, because I thought initially I was going to do video for the podcast, but I was like, nah. cool. Let's talk about your vision. What do you want to do in 10 years?
Where I want to be in 10 years, one of the biggest problems I had when I first got into my quote-unquote dream job is learning that the fitness industry, whether it be the collegiate or professional setting, was set on, and I was literally told that if your athletes are doing to the level they should, you shouldn't be able to keep a healthy lifestyle yourself.
Say that one more time.
If you should be working so hard for your athletes that you don't have the time to work out for yourself.
Oh, that's kind of crap.
Was a terrible mindset that I was given. And if you look at the collegiate setting or these professional settings, it's totally true. How often do you see an overweight strength coach?
Or football coaches going along the sideline.
Exactly. And that's
some notable exceptions, but a lot of them are.
They're most of the time they're working so hard themselves that they don't get to live the fitness life. And I'm a huge person of practice what you preach. And my eventual goal for this is to have almost an incubator of dietitians, all with different fields, so that I can have a specialty dietitian that is more of a psychologist dietitian double as a team to work off of, one that maybe works with more of a figure athlete. Clients that I don't work well with, figure athletes don't usually like me.
Oh, let's talk about that. Why?
Because I care about your performance more than I care about your aesthetics. And to me, I would rather you be able to concentrate in your daily life. And it's hard for me to get in the mindset of the sport is figure. And I'm not saying it's anything wrong with it, but I have a hard time putting myself in those shoes.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for me to say, okay, we're going to drop your food down to this much just so you can look a certain way.
Right. And that brings up something really interesting for me that we haven't touched upon, which is PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. And a lot of people in the figure circuit.
Yes.
In a lot of the stuff we've talked about in professional sports, in mixed martial arts, are involved with PEDs.
Yeah.
How do you see that, and when do you? There must have been times.
There's conversations you have.
Yeah. So how do those go?
So against most dietitians are probably saying, as most dietitians, if they hear, oh, by the way, this is what I use, and this is the fear of people actually saying that, they're going to be like, the most dietitians will say, well, I'm not going to work with you then. I don't work with athletes that have performance-enhancing drugs that aren't illegal, per se.
Steroids.
Right. And that's not the case. Actually, I do have 2 clients that do utilize outside sources than just food. Why? Because I want them to be safe with what they do. It's a completely different conversation with people that aren't using it in safe methods. They don't have a proper way of going about it or someone administering it properly, or they aren't going to fuel themselves properly with it, or their sport, if they're competitive in that sport, that it's against the rules of that sport. Those are my 3 major things of when I say it's a completely different conversation, it will probably be no.
So, okay, let's recap there for 1 second. So what do you mean it will be?
Why no?
So you do say no to those people?
Yes.
Okay.
I say no if it's against the rules and laws in your sport.
Got it.
If you do not have a safe administering of, if you do not have a doctor telling you this is how much you're going to take and this is exactly what you're doing and I'm only giving you this amount so you can't get any extra, sure. And then the ones that aren't going to eat properly for being on those substrates.
So those are the times when you say this is not a good fit.
This is not a good fit for you. You're going to hurt yourself more than you're going to help yourself.
Right. Now, I guess I'm trying to say, are there
ways
sports? No, are there sports? Well, actually, that's a great question too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. But are there sports where it is legal to use PEDs?
Yeah. There are non-tested versions of figure athletes.
Oh, okay.
So that'd be one example. Or if they want to be in a sport but not compete. So if you are, I'm going to use this example, if you are a weightlifter and you want to just see what you can do and perform well and be healthy, there's actually a certain amount of health that actually can benefit from it. But at the same time, you're not going to compete.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
correctly with a doctor, not competing with it.
Interesting. So you wouldn't go out and throw out a blanket statement that PEDs are universally quote unquote wrong. So there's no moral judgment on it.
Exactly.
Okay. So what are specific? I mean, I know that there's specific cases where people are because of illness.
Yeah.
Need them. Are there any other cases you kind of mentioned?
I wouldn't say this is true illness. So I'm going to use this as an example. If I have someone that basically, because of different parts of I wouldn't call it an illness, but issues in their life, if they went through a rough military time and certain drugs that they got put on when they got back dropped their testosterone levels incredibly low. And it's not like they want to be a very competitive athlete. They just want to be healthy, feel good, and be able to keep the health that they would have with those natural testosterone levels as a normal person.
Because of antidepressant drugs can do that, right?
Exactly.
Oh, interesting.
So the sleep drugs and antidepressant drugs, when they're coming back, a lot of the PTSD people coming back will end up having really also some messed up testosterone issues.
Interesting. And are there natural ways to fix that beyond PDs?
There are, and if we've gone that route and tried them and they just haven't gotten anywhere with them, then maybe something they start that cycle back up and see if we can get them to start working themselves a little bit that way.
Okay.
But if it's affecting your day-to-day job, if you're not able to focus and not have the energy or the emotions to get through your day because you just feel like crap, it's something to think about.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. I'm glad we got to talk about that. That's, it's interesting to kind of dig into those things that may be a little more controversial.
Right.
But, bring them out to the open. Cool. Is there anything else that you want your audience to know about your business? Where can people find you? So where can people find your content? Where can people find your business?
Yeah, content. I actually try to have content a little bit more spread out. So On It just put out a piece that I worked with them. Atomic Athlete does have their online stuff that they're going to start dripping out pretty soon. Lift Lab out of Indianapolis has a lot of articles that I also put out on different sites. And then my own site is PursuitPN. So
now you don't have all of those pieces.
I do not.
Maybe that's a good thing too. Like having all those things there.
Place to put them all, and then
that's
a great idea.
Okay. Cool.
So good links out as well.
Yeah.
So I do have a collective, but at least having links to those other pages might be a great idea.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. And your Instagram account is?
Carla Pursuit PN.
Carla Pursuit PN. Any other social media places where you put out things?
I'm not going to lie. I have a Twitter. I do not use it.
Okay.
So I would not follow that guy.
Don't follow.
Yeah. But I am on Facebook as well, Pursuit Nutrition. That's another great way to find me. And website and in person.
Awesome. Well, Carla Nowicki, thank you so much. You're very inspiring, and congratulations on your success. And I wish you much continued success with your business.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Small Business War Stories. If you enjoy the show, share it with a friend, or you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our blog at blog.proven.com. If you have an idea for us, we'd love to hear it. Please email us at podcast@proven.com. See you next time. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.